It started, as all great disasters do, with an unsolicited flock of pigeons. I was on my fifth-floor balcony when Caleb decided to stage the sort of over-the-top, cinematic, and utterly impractical romantic gesture that always invited public scrutiny. He didn't just show up with flowers. Caleb, my beautiful, dramatic, suit-clad boyfriend, had arranged for a genuine, bona fide flock of carrier pigeons. Ilera, he bellowed from the street below, his voice echoing off the brick canyon of the city buildings. There he was, immaculate as always, standing next to a very flustered man in tweeds struggling with a wicker basket. What in the name of avian influenza is going on? I shouted back, feeling utterly unprepared for the public display. It's a declaration, he announced, holding a massive scroll. 20 white pigeons erupted into the air, scattering immediately. They dive-bombed pedestrians and circled erratically, clearly confused by the city. Caleb pointed dramatically to the single, largest, most stressed-looking pigeon that had landed on my air conditioning unit. I managed to snag the poor, panting bird after a brief, undignified scuffle. Untying the scroll was like performing microsurgery. Finally, I unrolled the parchment. It was a poem. A terrible poem which rhymed Ilera with tiara and concluded with the line, "Our love, my star, will never die, but soar like birds into the sky." I stared at the schmaltzy verse, then back down at Caleb, who was beaming like a proud idiot. "It's beautiful, Caleb." I lied, the life feeling heavy. "But seriously, where are you going?" Caleb was beautiful, successful, and obsessed with me. He was my golden retriever in a bespoke suit. Perfect, almost too perfect. The kind of perfect that made you check the fine print for hidden fees. "I'm off to London," he announced cheerfully. "A major disruptor conference. I booked a charter jet, but it leaves in 2 hours. I needed to see your face one last time before I was forced to endure 3 days of venture capitalists talking about synergy. You know, I hate synergy." I watched him wave and stride off. The subtle contradiction. Hating synergy but flying across the world for a synergy conference, claiming to hate public displays but staging a pigeon coup, registered. I dismissed it, attributing it, as always, to Caleb being a beautiful, extravagant contradiction. It was a moment of pure, blinding, cinematic romance. And it was all a lie. The next 3 days were a blur of work, leftovers, and my best friend, Theo, keeping me company. Theo was my anchor, the pragmatic, slightly cynical counterpoint to Caleb's overwhelming sparkle. He ran a small, struggling vintage bookstore downstairs. While Caleb was a champagne flute, Theo was a sturdy, slightly chipped coffee mug. "Did you really catch the pigeon?" Theo asked that evening, leaning against my kitchen counter, drinking bourbon from a novelty mug. "Yes. It's currently judging my life choices," I said. "Classic Caleb," Theo sighed. "He's putting on a show. That's his love language. Ambient theater." I insisted he was sincere, but noted the anomaly. No club sandwich photo, just a curt text about the flight. Theo just nodded, but his eyes held a strange, complicated expression that always surfaced when Caleb was over the top. I was too distracted to notice the single, significant detail. Theo was wearing a bizarre, mismatched pair of socks, one bright green, one navy blue, both speckled with tiny, white polka dots. They clashed violently with his usual all-black aesthetic and felt oddly familiar. The feeling lingered, a tiny splinter I dismissed, assuming Theo's sock drawer was simply chaotic. I was too busy focusing on Caleb and the traumatized pigeon. I should have paid closer attention to the socks. They were not a chaotic fashion statement, but the first, perfectly absurd thread of the unraveling. A thread woven in betrayal, destined to snap in spectacular, comedic fashion. This was my mistake. This was where the romantic comedy ended, and the far more chaotic, betrayal-fueled comedy began. The actual, soul-crushing moment of discovery didn't happen in a dramatic confrontation, or via a suspicious text message, or even a lipstick stain on a collar. It happened as advertised, with a polka-dot sock, or rather half a polka-dot sock, and a tub of artisanal, small-batch, sustainably sourced olive oil. The irony was not lost on me, even in the subsequent spiral of hysterical laughter and existential dread. It was the third day of Caleb's supposed synergy torture in London. The pigeon, whom I had named Lord Byron, due to his dramatic flair for flight and subsequent deep depression, had finally been coaxed off the AC unit and was recuperating nicely in a makeshift cardboard box hotel. I was still riding the high of the grand gesture, occasionally rereading the awful poem and reminding myself that love was about effort, not meter. The lack of communication was the only anomaly. No greasy club sandwich picture. No jet lag complaints. Just silence, punctuated by a single, curt text. Keynote ran late. V. Tired. TTYLX. I decided to do something productive. Caleb's apartment, which was 4 blocks away and significantly more expensive than mine, was a shrine to minimalist luxury. He had insisted I keep a key, calling it a key to our future, which I had always found slightly creepy, but incredibly romantic. I decided to pop over and drop off a gift, a rare, vintage edition of a book he'd mentioned needing for his curated library aesthetic. I knew he wouldn't be there, but leaving it felt like a small, sweet act of anti-synergy solidarity. I let myself in. The apartment was pristine, silent, and smelled faintly of expensive leather and disappointment. Everything was exactly where it should be, except for one thing: the kitchen counter. Caleb was obsessed with his kitchen, which he used exclusively for heating takeout. But today, it was slightly off. Specifically, there was a glass bottle of the aforementioned artisanal olive oil, which he always kept in a specific, numbered cupboard, sitting smack dab in the middle of the spotless marble. And next to it, on the gleaming white counter, was a single, crumpled, navy blue sock, speckled with bright white polka dots. I froze. My brain, usually a chaotic, high-speed centrifuge of anxiety and obscure trivia, suddenly ground to a halt. Polka dots, navy blue, white speckles. I had seen that sock. I had seen the matching green and white polka dot sock on Theo's foot 2 nights ago. The cognitive dissonance was so profound, I actually checked my phone to confirm the date. Was it April Fool's? Had Theo, in a fit of inexplicable sock-related pranksterism, broken into Caleb's apartment to leave half a dirty novelty sock next to an expensive condiment? Highly unlikely. Theo was many things, but a sock burglar he was not. My internal monologue went into overdrive, immediately bypassing sadness and launching straight into baffled, enraged stand-up comedy. What kind of betrayal is this? A betrayal involving oil and hosiery? Are they filming a remake of The Socks Hank Redemption? Is this some elaborate coded message? I picked up the sock with 2 fingers, holding it like it was a biohazard. It wasn't just a sock. It was the sock. The exact pattern, the exact thickness. And then I noticed the other thing. The thing that sealed the deal. The final, undeniable, deeply mundane piece of evidence. On Caleb's sleek, minimalist, utterly impersonal refrigerator, held up by a tiny, decorative magnet shaped like a golden retriever, was a small, handwritten note. The handwriting wasn't Caleb's perfect, architecturally precise script. It was messy, slightly cramped, and written in my favorite purple pen, the one I kept exclusively for writing grocery lists and dark poetry. It read, "Thanks for the amazing 3 days. I left the oil out because I wasn't sure where it went. And sorry about the sock. I'll pick up the other one when you get back from London." P.S. Synergy is overrated. T. T for Theo. My anchor. My sturdy, slightly chipped coffee mug. The man who had been drinking bourbon and judging Caleb's love language in my kitchen just 48 hours ago. The wave of emotion that hit me wasn't grief. It was a bizarre, stomach-churning cocktail of indignity, fury, and, weirdly, relief that I hadn't been wrong about the socks. I knew I wasn't crazy. The validation of my observational skills was momentarily more satisfying than the pain of the double betrayal. I sat down hard on Caleb's expensive, white leather sofa. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call Caleb. I didn't call Theo. I opened my camera, took a high-resolution, flash-on photo of the sock, the olive oil, and the note, making sure to capture the golden retriever magnet for maximum ironic effect. Then, I did the only thing a true protagonist of a dark, absurd comedy could do. I started laughing. It started as a small, tight, manic giggle that quickly escalated into a full-blown, body-shaking roar that felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside. They hadn't just cheated. They had left evidence. Evidence so utterly ludicrous, a cryptic sock next to premium cooking oil, that it felt less like a betrayal and more like a poorly executed episode of a reality TV show. And the note: synergy is overrated. The sheer audacity, the lazy, contemptuous disregard for Caleb's intricate web of lies. I finally took a shaky breath and focused. Caleb wasn't in London. Caleb was with Theo. Theo was here in this apartment 2 days ago, pretending to commiserate with me about Caleb's exaggerated love language while probably texting Caleb things like, "Babe, she bought it." The pigeon thing was genius. The mental image of Caleb and Theo, these two fundamentally opposed men, trying to maintain a clandestine affair was so ridiculous it almost cured my heartbreak instantly. Caleb, the meticulous planner, and Theo, the chaotic, polka-dot sock-wearing disaster. They must have been fighting constantly about where to put the olive oil. My focus shifted from the pain to the plot. I had to know everything. I had to understand the logistics of this ridiculous, multi-layered deception. How long? Where? And why, for the love of God, the polka-dot socks? The green one was missing. Did Caleb have it? Was it a token of their illicit, oil-splattered love? I stood up, the laughter finally fading, leaving behind a hard, cold core of determination. I was Alara, the woman who debugged the most vicious JavaScript, the woman who had survived 7 years of the city's rent, and the woman who had successfully navigated the existential threat of Lord Byron the carrier pigeon. I was not going to have my heart broken by a guy who thought a poem rhyming star with Alara was high art and a best friend who couldn't even manage to keep his questionable hosiery off the counter. My revenge would not be dramatic tears or yelling. That was Caleb's style. My revenge would be tactical, embarrassing, and deeply, deeply funny. It would be an intricate, slow-burn performance art piece that would make Caleb's pigeon stunt look like a child's finger painting. I took one last look at the scene. The pristine apartment, the offensive sock, the note, the high-end olive oil. I carefully placed the book I had bought, a signed first edition, on the sock. I didn't mess anything up. I didn't smash anything. I simply left the evidence exactly as I found it, except for the addition of the expensive, highly sought-after book, a silent, pointed monument to their idiocy. I locked the door behind me, the click of the bolt sounding like the final, definitive close of one chapter and the opening of an entirely new, slightly deranged, and infinitely more interesting one. Operation Slightly Used Croissant, as I had just instantly christened my new revenge plan, was officially a go. My heart was broken, but my sense of comedic timing was, thankfully, intact. The world was about to learn that if you're going to betray Alara, you'd better not leave any loose ends, especially not the sartorial kind. Operation Slightly Used Croissant required 3 things: stealth, an intimate knowledge of Caleb's deeply ingrained neuroticism, and a genuine disregard for my own personal safety, especially around high-tension wires. I realized immediately that the most satisfying vengeance was not financial or physical, it was psychological, played out on the stage of Caleb's massive, overinflated ego. He loved drama, so I would give him drama, but it would be drama he couldn't control, starring him as the bewildered victim of extremely mild, yet soul-crushingly inconvenient, misfortune. My first target was the aforementioned polka-dot offender, Theo. He was easier to isolate. He spent his days in his bookstore, Bound for Glory, a name I had always found slightly ironic, now tragically so, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and new lies. I needed to confront him, not with the full, devastating force of the sock, but with a series of tiny, pointed, passive-aggressive acts designed to induce maximum guilt and paranoia before the final, theatrical reveal. I started small. I went to the bookstore the next day, wearing an expression of studied, utterly convincing innocence. Theo, who was shelving an obscure volume on 18th century gardening, looked up and instantly went pale, the color draining from his face faster than a politician's conviction. He was clearly expecting a scene, the tears, the righteous anger, the hurled first edition. Instead, I gave him a tight, slightly too bright smile.
Theo.
I just wanted to stop by and tell you the nicest thing. I chirped, making sure my voice carried across the silent shop floor. Caleb messaged me. He said the Synergy conference is amazing, absolutely transformative. He said he's learned so much about, disrupting the Synergy pipeline. He even sent me a picture of his room service. A club sandwich. I pulled out my phone and held up a photo. It wasn't the photo Caleb should have sent. It was a photo I had meticulously crafted, a perfect, highly filtered image of a beautiful, glistening club sandwich I'd ordered from a 5-star hotel near my office, complete with a tiny, impeccably placed sprig of parsley. Theo stammered.
Oh.
That's nice. He usually says he hates Synergy. I know, but he's really embracing it. He said he's meeting someone named Tess, a key disruptor. He said she's just amazing and they're spending a lot of time together, synergizing. He even sent me a picture of her. I showed him the next photo, a completely random, highly attractive stock photo model from a business networking site, airbrushed to look suspiciously like a corporate vampire. Theo's eyes darted nervously. Tess. Never heard of her. Oh. Well, she's new to the scene. Anyway, I bought you a treat. I pulled out a small, slightly squashed brown paper bag. It's a croissant. I bought it this morning. It's a little used. I sort of held it while I was on the bus, but I didn't take a bite or anything. I just want to make sure my best friend feels appreciated while Caleb is busy finding Synergy with Tess. I slammed the bag onto the counter next to his cash register, the slightly used croissant sitting there like a tiny, carbohydrate-based landmine. It was an insult so subtle, so weirdly personal, that it completely destabilized him. He couldn't question the gesture, but the implication that my appreciation for him was as stale and compromised as the slightly flattened pastry was pure, beautiful psychological warfare. He looked genuinely sick. This was Phase 1, guilt and confusion. Phase 2 targeted Caleb's paranoia, scheduled for his triumphant, non-synergized return. I spent the next 24 hours perfecting the plan, which I dubbed the Great Reorganization. Caleb's life was an exercise in perfect linear order. Every spice jar, every book, every throw pillow was positioned according to an internal, highly specific logic. I couldn't break things, but I could reorganize them. The moment I got word that Caleb's jet was landing, via a carefully tracked flight number I found in an old email, I executed the plan. I went back to his apartment, the key now feeling less like an admission of love and more like a tactical weapon. First, the kitchen. Caleb organized his spices alphabetically. I reorganized them by country of origin, but used the metric of average national spice consumption per capita. The chili flakes, Mexican, highest consumption, were next to the sage, American, moderate, which was next to the cinnamon, Sri Lankan, specialized. Visually, it was a mess. Functionally, it was a labyrinth. Next, the bookshelves. His thousands of books were ordered by the color of the spine, creating a jarring, deeply unsettling rainbow effect that mixed Tolstoy with self-help guides. The only exception was the single-signed first edition I had left earlier, which I moved to the bathroom cabinet, right next to the toothpaste. The final, and most crucial, step, the technology. Caleb had an elaborate smart home system. Using his access codes, which were, hilariously, the date of our first kiss, I changed the name of every single smart device to something deeply unsettling. The living room lights became the eyes of judgment, the thermostat, the breath of regret, the automated blinds, the veil of deceit, the Alexa equivalent, narrator of lies. I then changed the morning routine. Instead of gently waking him with a soft jazz playlist, the routine was now set to blast the dramatic theme song from the film Psycho at full volume, followed by the narrator of lies announcing in a cheerful, synthetic voice, "Good morning, Caleb." Today's forecast is 100% chance of exposure and slightly used croissants. I finished just 10 minutes before his expected arrival, slipping out the back door feeling a sense of deep, almost spiritual fulfillment. It was the perfect crime. Nothing was broken. Everything was technically where it should be. But his entire world, his meticulously constructed illusion of order, was now actively mocking him. I waited. The silence was agonizing. Then, I heard it, faintly, from 4 blocks away, a high-pitched, guttural scream, followed by the frantic, tinny shriek of the Psycho theme song. It was music to my ears. The confrontation with Caleb, the climax of this entire absurd opera, was slated for later that evening at a mutual friend's engagement party. I knew he wouldn't miss it. Caleb lived for parties. They were his stage. I contacted Theo, using the new code name, Agent Polka-Dot, and told him to meet me in the park before the party. It was time for the final act, the one that needed Theo, the accessory, to fully expose Caleb, the star. The betrayal was real, but the response was going to be legendarily funny, and the only way to achieve peak comedic gold was through controlled chaos, a beautifully orchestrated mess of shame and polka dots. My revenge was brewing, and it smelled distinctly of misplaced oregano and psychological turmoil. I just needed to make sure I secured the missing green sock first, because no revenge plot is complete without the full set of incriminating hosiery. The confrontation, when it finally happened, felt less like a dramatic movie climax and more like the end of a very confusing community theater production. I met Theo in the park, as requested, beneath a towering, suspiciously bald oak tree that seemed to be silently judging our life choices. Theo, Agent Polka, looked like a man who had not slept, eaten, or successfully located a clean pair of non-polka trousers in approximately 72 hours. He was wearing the same black jeans, a wrinkled shirt, and a look of profound, existential dread. "Ilera, look, I know what you're thinking," he started, running a hand through his already messy hair. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm thinking, Theo." I cut in, my voice calm, almost unnervingly serene. "I'm thinking that the chili powder is next to the ginger in Caleb's apartment because Mexico consumes more capsaicin per capita than India consumes ginger, which is a structural nightmare for a shelf. But not the point. The point, Agent Polka-Dot, is the sock. And the olive oil. And the fact that my entire love life has been reduced to an artisanal condiment and a misplaced piece of hosiery." He winced. It wasn't about the olive oil. It was complicated. It wasn't what you think. "Oh, I think I know what I think," I said, pulling out my phone and showing him the note I had photographed. "Thanks for the amazing 3 days. P.S. Synergy is overrated. You know, Theo, this isn't exactly subtle. This is the literary equivalent of a cartoon steam whistle and a giant arrow pointing at betrayal here." Theo sighed, a long, weary sound of a man defeated by his own terrible note-writing skills. "Ilera, the amazing 3 days, they weren't that kind of amazing 3 days. It was a lock-in, a deep dive. We were trying to steal his idea." I stared at him. Steal his what now? Steal his idea? You were having a highly coordinated, oil-adjacent affair while he was not in London, and you're trying to tell me you were just holding a high-stakes, multi-day, hosiery-optional corporate espionage session. He nodded miserably. Caleb isn't at a Synergy conference. He invented a proprietary algorithm called Disruptor Sync, which matches the exact public attention span to the optimal price point for luxury goods. He calls it Luxury Match. He was at a secret, invitation-only, silent auction in Zurich to sell it to a massive conglomerate. He faked the London trip because he's ridiculously secretive and paranoid about his inventions being stolen. "And you two were trying to steal it?" I asked, now utterly confused. The betrayal had suddenly gone from a simple, personal tragedy to a convoluted, farcical heist plot. "Not 2 of us. It was me and Caleb," Theo explained, throwing his hands up. "We were a team. We met because I knew his sister. We started this whole dating thing. The lavish gifts, the pigeons, the whole 9 yards, as an elaborate, months-long, ridiculously expensive cover story so that I could gain access to his apartment, his codes, and his highly encrypted server. He was using me as a mole. He thought I was trying to steal his idea for a rival company, but in reality, he was feeding me false code, watching me, and gathering data on who I reported to, while simultaneously using me as a prop for his grand romantic narrative. The affair was the cover for the cover. He was betting on me reporting back to my handlers about how perfect he was, thus driving up his personal brand value at the auction. I felt lightheaded. So, the entire pigeon thing was performance art for the benefit of a surveillance camera you didn't know existed, and the socks. The socks were a mistake. The green one is his. I wore them as a joke. We were having a pizza break, and I spilled marinara on my pants, so I changed into the shorts Caleb keeps here for me and threw on his novelty socks. The note was a message to Caleb's sister, who was providing backup tech support, saying we'd locked the server. I was worried the oil was too expensive to leave out. The full, beautiful horror of the situation dawned on me. The betrayal was not that my boyfriend cheated with my best friend. The betrayal was that my boyfriend had orchestrated an entire, fake relationship to use me and my best friend as tools in a bizarre, long-con corporate maneuver, all the while thinking he was the mastermind. The love was a lie. The betrayal was corporate. The comedy was pure gold. I pulled out a crumpled, neon green sock from my pocket. Is this the missing sock? Theo looked at it like it was a ghost. Yes. Where did you get that? From your apartment. I went to water your plants. The plant looked thirsty. I handed it to him. Theo, you may be a terrible friend, a sloppy houseguest, and a corporate spy, but you are not a cheater. That makes you mildly less repulsive. Now, let's go expose the true monster. I then revealed the final, beautiful piece of the puzzle. I hadn't just changed the names of the smart devices. I had programmed the narrator of lies to record and broadcast every word spoken into Caleb's main living space speaker system once the Psycho theme song played. And I had set the timer for 7:30 p.m., the exact moment he'd be walking into the engagement party. At the party, Caleb arrived 30 minutes late, impeccably dressed, looking slightly twitchy, but still radiating leading man. He air-kissed the host and immediately spotted me. He strode over, putting on his award-winning "I missed you so much" face. Alara. My love. Synergy was synergistic, but exhausting. My flight was bumpy, but nothing compared to the thrill of seeing your beautiful face again. Was it Caleb? I asked, smiling genuinely for the first time. Was the synergy truly synergistic? Did you meet Tess? Before he could launch into his prepared monologue, the room's sound system, the very expensive speakers used for the dance floor, suddenly cut through the ambient music. The Psycho theme song shrieked, making everyone jump. Then, the narrator of Lie's cheerful synthetic voice boomed out. Good evening, partygoers. Today's forecast is 100% chance of exposure and slightly used croissants. Welcome back, Caleb. Here is a recording of your deepest, most recent monologue, as recorded by the eyes of judgment. The sound system then played Caleb's frantic voice, recorded just moments after he walked into his reorganized home. I knew it. That little weasel Alara. She moved the paprika. Nobody moves the paprika. She knows it goes by the Scoville scale, not by country. This is brilliant, passive-aggressive revenge. She's onto the plan. The whole pigeon thing, the London trip, the fake love, it was all going so well. Now I have to change all the codes. And where the hell is the good book I bought for myself? And why is the thermostat telling me to repent? The room went silent. Caleb went the color of a freshly painted wall. I walked up to him, took the single polka-dot sock from Theo, and placed it neatly in Caleb's breast pocket. The paprika goes by Scoville, Caleb, not by country. You're a fraud, a sociopath, and apparently a terrible organizer. And for the record, I hated the pigeon poem. I turned on my heel and left, Theo scrambling to catch up. He wasn't perfect, but he was real, and he was currently looking at me with undisguised awe. The betrayal was over, replaced by a deep, beautiful, shared comedy. I didn't need a golden retriever in a bespoke suit. I just needed a sturdy, chipped coffee mug who knew the difference between love and corporate espionage and, crucially, how to keep his socks off the counter. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: it would be much, much funnier.